Well, joining me now from Bath is Kellet, who's a Senior Research Advisor for Climate and Environment at the Overseas Development Institute. Very good evening to you, Kellet. Thanks for talking to us. So how do Brits compare with the whole of the rest of the world in terms of generosity? Are we right up there?
I think in certain terms, in certain calculations, we are certainly up there. In terms of volume, we are second in the world, only behind the United States. Closely followed by Turkey, which sometimes surprises people. That is a relatively new development. But if you look at it in terms of per person, we're quite considerably behind some other countries, particularly the Nordic states, such as Sweden or Norway, for example. They traditionally give about $100 per person per year in humanitarian aid, whereas the UK is about $18 or $20. The United States, for example, although it gives about nearly $4 billion in aid, that works out, I think, close to about $10 or so each and every year. So there are different kinds of calculations in terms of generosity.
And what is it that drives or inspires a nation to be generous? What is it to do with a particular country's culture?
Oh, well, that's a very difficult one to work out. I think there are many different kinds of things. There are sort of general sort of principles of civil society, I think, in terms of charitable giving, things which certainly the United Kingdom has very much, I think, built into the way we see ourselves and the world. That's why we are a considerable giver, both as a nation, but also as individuals. As you've rightly pointed out, we've given £33 million already to the Philippines. But there are also, religious imperatives. If you look at Islam and Zakat, for example, which demands that people should give money, and that spreads across different religions as well. So there are different ways or different reasons why people give money. But we can certainly say that the United Kingdom is one of the most generous, both as a nation and as individuals as well.
And there's no doubt that what's happened in the Philippines is an appalling tragedy, but is there something that sets one disaster apart from another in terms of people wanting to give?
Yes, there is. But I think maybe we probably should just take a little bit of a step back in a sense and say that this is not just a rich country or rich nations and their people giving money to the Philippines. I was in the Philippines this year doing an analysis of their disaster risk reduction. And they place disaster risk up there as an issue of national security, spending nearly $1 billion a year of their own money and trying to reduce their disaster risk. So that there are many sort of factors which are involved here, and it's not just the dynamic of us giving to them.
And clearly the hope is that the money that has been given by all the countries of the world to the Philippines will make a difference to rebuilding the country and trying to alleviate some of the suffering there. But has there been how much thought and how much money goes into trying to make a country more resilient against weather impacts like this? For example, rebuilding homes that may not withstand typhoons. Could the money be better spent?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think it's probably the most apt question to ask right at the moment. Of course, it's quite a challenging one in a sense because our hearts and our minds are drawn to alleviate suffering now. And it's to go back to your question, which I probably missed answering. I mean, really, that's what drives people attention right here and now, is the fact that we see people that are suffering, and we as a rich nation, and comparatively, even when we have difficulties financially, very much richer than the Philippines, and individually and as families even very much richer than the average Filipino family. Now the time is actually right now to consider how we can prevent this kind of thing happening in the Philippines and in other countries around the world. So how do we change, if you like, the mindset, both particularly of governments, which can do this much easier than individuals, and start to put our attention less on emergency response and giving vast amounts of money after a crisis, towards actually trying to prevent those crises and reduce the impact of those crises when they happen. And that's really what we have to consider right now.
Well, Kellet, very interesting to hear your thoughts. Thanks for talking to us tonight.
Thank you.